Welcome to the Little Bit of Life podcast, where we talk about the things we think but don't always say out loud. Settle in, get cozy, and let's get to talking. Hey, everybody. Welcome in a Little Bit of Life podcast right here with your host, Little. Do you feel like the vibe is a little bit more cozy this time? It's because we're kicking off season 10. 10 seasons, 3 years. Yeah, we've been a little bit busy, but I have on a return guest because y'all liked him the first time. Just wait until this episode. What up, Ethan? How is it going? It's good to have you on again.
Hey, Tabitha. Man, it is good to be back. It's been like 8 months or so, but
Time
we've
goes
kept
so
in
fast.
touch and yes, it does. This whole year, and as we'll get into, it's been, it's gone by very quickly, and it's a flash before our eyes, literally.
For sure. We're diving into this episode. You guys are going to kind of get a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a sneak peek right in the title, but we're talking about men. We're talking about social media. We're talking about religion, which so many people are going to be like, why is she talking about this? Because in our generation right now, in our era of what's going on, we need to talk about this. But this episode isn't going to be what you think. So we're diving in. So get ready, get cozy if you're on your morning commute or maybe your evening commute, or maybe you're just really listening to this because you need some depth and maybe a little bit of soul in your soul. This is the perfect spot for you to be. All right, we're diving in, Ethan. Let's go. We're talking addiction. So
Let's
many
go.
men are suffering with addiction right now, but we're not talking drugs. We're not talking alcohol. Those are usually the first things that come up. We're not even talking gambling. What addiction? Because you're a man of faith. You've been very, very present on social media with that. But you, of all people, have suffered with addiction. Dive in.
Yeah. Addiction comes in all kinds of ways. Like you said, like when people think of addiction, they just think, alcohol, smoking, drugs, any of that stuff, substance abuse. The one that doesn't want to get talked about that is an absolute epidemic is pornography, and it is causing a lot of men and a lot of women a lot of harm, especially in their relationships or their lack of relationships. And as someone who has been always very religious and grown up in a religious household, me growing up as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that kind of stuff is very, I don't know about other religions or other religious households, but that topic inside the home with parents to children, it doesn't come down the ladder. And sometimes the only way that we hear about it is through our religious leaders. And that ends up becoming such a collision course, because what we're really taught in our religion is it's supposed to come down to the ladders where parents do feel comfortable talking about these things with their kids. And so my addiction started when I was, probably it was freshman year. But mine is a little crazy. My story's a little crazy because while I was obviously a kid that was like definitely interested in women and so forth, but I was still like behind. I started a year early in my education, so I was like a year behind everybody else. And so socially, I was not there, to the point where I was being harassed by guys at my school, like always calling me gay and so forth. And so I felt like I had to prove something when I was younger. And so to prove that I wasn't gay, I started watching porn. And before you knew it, 20 years later, 35-year-old single guy here, still struggling with it. And it wasn't until this year specifically that I finally have realized it's a real issue. Especially marriage does not help addictions, especially in pornography and sex addiction and all that stuff. There are many people out there that says, well, if I just find the right person, like it'll go away. And as I have found through people in my addiction recovery classes that I go to, it is quite obvious that it is that addiction still can trigger. And it's not due to the woman or whatever, her fault or anything like that, but it's just things that never got taken care of prior to the relationship or the marriage.
So talking about being raised Like, you were being raised in the church, you were raised with parents and faith and, a religion, and then getting into this porn addiction in freshman year. Do you feel like those two things almost battled each other in what you were looking for or what you felt you had to have in a female based on your faith journey and in church, you want a godly woman, somebody that's possibly in the LDS Church versus pornography is not a place that really respects women at the end of the day. Do you feel like those two kind of struggled with each other?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I was also in Boy Scouts. Our motto is to respect women, girls, and children. Everything that I was learning, or raised with growing up, it completely contradicted outside thoughts, those outside worldviews to my religious worldview, and that in itself, if you don't have the proper tools and your family to allow you to be honest about what's going on, I think that's the biggest issue. Is that some in my faith, and I know this from other people that I've grown up with, there is a level of our generation that now knows what we went through, because we were the first generation that really had the complete free access to this material. And
Mm-hmm.
stuff that our parents had to go to a freaking magazine store or a video store to have access to this kind of material. And now we're fine, as millennials, we're finding this stuff for free. And so I believe our generation, because of how we grew up, now we are definitely being more open. I know a lot of my friends, they're teenage kids, they're having these conversations early on that we weren't getting when we were younger. And in many ways, no fault to our parents. They didn't really grow up with it. They didn't know how it was actually being used.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was definitely a huge contradiction. Um, to trying to fit in with the world, but realizing, like, in the back of your head, like, hey, this isn't right. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing is not helping me. It's only making things worse. So,
Mm. I remember staying the night at my cousin. He was just a couple months older than me, and I remember always staying at their house, and we would do like weird science experiments, baking soda, vinegar. We thought we were like Bill Nye the Science Guy back then, little weirdos. And I remember like going through the basement and like finding like I think it was like an old Penthouse magazine or something like back in the day. And I remember being like so mortified. I mean, I'm sorry if my aunt or my family's listening to this. Like, I never told y'all, but like I found it and I remember being like so mortified. So I remember in like college, I dated a guy that was like very, very into pornography. That was like his sense of comfort in like what sex was to be, what a relationship was supposed to be. And it like always triggered me back to like when I was like 6 years old, like finding that magazine and sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, I did something
mhm.
wrong. What do I do? Do I look away? Do I throw it away? Like, so we talked to you a couple months ago. Can't believe it's been like 8 or 9 months. Time goes so fast. And you had
Yeah,
strayed, right? In your faith, you had definitely strayed. You were on this travel journey. You were just trying to find a sense of purpose. Now, 8 to 9 months later, did you find your purpose in yourself or did you find yourself back in faith again?
definitely finding purpose in yourself is such a worldly view that, yeah, I definitely found my purpose back in my faith again, and being even more convicted of that because of the journey that I went on. If you do you want me to share that right now? Because
Yeah.
I definitely
Oh,
can.
yeah. Yeah, we want to hear about it for sure.
So the last time that we were on, I had just spent 2 weeks in Sacramento, and like I said, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as many people know, we have missionaries all throughout the world. They show up in white tie shirts. They're young, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, just right out of high school, going right out there and so forth. So, but after our mission, sometimes we get comfortable again. We just kind of like, oh, well, we did our 2 years or 18 months and all is good. I did my good works, good works. And that hit me this year that, like, our testimonies are not supposed to be buried. The scripture that talks about the city on the hill, a city on a hill cannot be hid when there's a candle. And that light is that it talks about in that scripture. is our testimony. And testimonies are experiences that we have throughout our life. They're not just a one-stop shop to belief. It's like, yes, I had that experience, but how often are we told in the scriptures, remember, 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 remember? And it's because we don't remember. All the things that have happened in our lives are miracles that have happened for us. And so when I was in Sacramento last year, I was staying with my aunt, and my aunt and my dad are 2 years apart. They were both given up for adoption at birth, but they are both biologically full biological brother sister, which is very odd. Usually it's a half brother at half brothers, half sister at that situation, both
Mm-hmm.
fully biological. So I stayed with her in Sacramento for a couple weeks because I felt like I needed to help her with her house and stuff like that. There was a lot going on with her and her health, and so I stayed there for a couple weeks. This is going to come full circle to a couple weeks ago. When I was in Sacramento, I had this feeling that I needed to reach out to the missionaries in my church, that there was something there. I needed to reach out to them. And one day I was sitting in the Walmart parking lot and I was super frustrated. I was on the phone with a friend, and I can't remember if it was my spiritual ears that heard it or if it was physically my friend said this. But all I knew was all I heard was, Ethan, whatever you need is going to be inside Walmart. And that felt strange to me. I hung up the phone, got off the phone with my friend. I walked into Walmart, and lo and behold, there were two sister missionaries that walked up to me in Walmart. And I just started crying. I was like, I've been praying for you guys because my aunt needs help. And if anybody knows that the missionaries are very serviceable, you need something, that they will do everything in their power to help you. And so they connected me with some other young men, elders in the area. And I went to church a couple weeks later and I connected with them. And I was sitting in this meeting it's all men and nobody knows who I am. And 5 minutes left before church was over, in the Sunday school room, I decided that I was going to raise my hand and share the experience that I was having out there. And after we said the prayer to close out the meeting, this young man came up to me and said, I didn't know if I wanted to serve a mission until now. And at that moment, I was just like so grateful that I shared that. And if he felt that, that was his spiritual answer that he needed, I was all for it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't know is that this would come full circle like 9 months later. And that was just recently, a couple months ago, I hurt my shoulder really bad. And to the point where the only way I could get any help on a medical note was to go back to Arizona, where I'm currently living in Utah. So my dad happened to be coming back from Idaho. He picked me up in Utah and we went down to Arizona. I was down there for a couple weeks. About 4 days before I left back up to Utah, it was a Thursday morning. Then the morning before that, my dad ran into an old mentor of mine in my church, and he reached out to him. My dad said, "Hey, Ethan's going through a little bit of a rough time right now. Why don't if you could reach out to him, that'd be great." And lo and behold, he called me the next morning, and we're chatting it up, just kind of figuring out where I'm at. And he said, "Ethan, do you remember Joe Maldonado?" And I said, "Yes, of course I do. He's one of my close friends." He's like, "Well, since he passed away 4 years ago, his parents have been struggling. And I have been praying for a couple months since I hurt my shoulder, to find an answer in how to help this family. And I feel like you need to go and talk to them." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." That next Sun, so I reached out to them, and they told me to come and meet them on a Sunday. And so I got out of church and went home, got changed, and went over to meet them. And the story that I just got done telling you guys, they asked me, what have I been up to? What's going on? And I shared that story with them. I shared that amazing moment that I had with that young man at church. And I knew at that moment, and if you know anything, which you will now, Joe was the greatest missionary I ever knew. He couldn't talk to girls for the life of him, but he could talk about Jesus and the gospel any day of his life. He had that much ambition and conviction in it that it was just amazing. And I remember as I'm telling the story, I've had this feeling that Joe was there with me at that moment, that he's the reason why that testimony and that missionary or that young man wanted to go on a mission and preach about Jesus Christ. And I'm sharing this with his parents, and obviously we're all pretty emotional. And I said this to her. I said, I feel like there's someone that is struggling the same way that you're struggling with losing Joe, the way that you did, that someone is going to need you. Um, that is now in this similar situation. And his mom said, Ethan, just yesterday, one of Joe's childhood friends died. And his mom reached out to me and asked and hit us all like a ton of bricks. Come to find out that this friend of Joe's was also a childhood friend of mine also, and that all of us were connected in this situation. And just to share how powerful this is to me in my life, I have been probably the brokest I've ever been. Um, this year in my life, I've had
Mhm.
some amazing experiences, but this entire time, I have not been given the jobs that I have wanted. I have been
Mhm.
offered jobs that didn't feel right. I have had injuries that obviously were the reason for so many things. And since I've been back to Utah, as of today, I was offered a position, and it's everything that I need has now come at a time where that whole 10 months was about God shaping me
Mhm.
to do what he needed to bring his children back to center, and to
Mhm.
be bringing them back to their testimony and bringing me there too. But every single one of us is a testimony of God. It's we are his testimony, that broken people can still do what he needs to be done. Isn't
Mhm.
that amazing?
Mhm. I
Like,
want people to replay that. Go back 10 seconds and just re-listen to that piece, because I think all of us sit in this moment of like, well, my life's not good now, so like I can't get back into my faith, or my job's not good now, so I'll do it later, or my marriage or my friendships, my relationship with myself is not good, so I don't feel worthy, I can't go back into my faith. Or maybe you're completely new. There's a huge moment, I think, that changed so many people's lives. It changed how they look at faith. And we're going to talk about it. Trust me, we're talking
mhm,
about it because the whole world's
yeah,
talking about it. So why wouldn't I talk about it? We're talking
mhm,
about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And you were in Utah, and that night, like, you and I were texting. That afternoon, we were texting. You went to the
yeah,
hospital. Like, it was a huge moment. Do you feel like,
mhm,
because in my sense, that really brought me back to my faith even stronger, but I think it brought people back in their faith, that we're not separated from each other. Like, I'm Christian, you're Mormon, you're LDS. Like, there's so many different senses of faith that people can practice, which we're so lucky that in our country we're able to. I mean, right now in Nigeria, there's
mhm,
Christians being murdered. How did you
mhm.
feel about that whole Charlie Kirk situation happening, being that you were right there in Utah?
I believe that the moment that anyone saw or heard the that was probably the most amount of prayers this world has ever given to God, probably since 9/11. I can't express how much I saw on social media. It was saying, I haven't been to church in 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't prayed in over 20 years, and this was the first time that I ever got down on my knees for it. So it changed the world, going to the hospital memorial that night and holding people that are strangers, mourning with people that I never knew prior to that, seeing people that came up from Vegas, a man that came up there and just drove 5 hours so that he could just be at a hospital memorial, was very emotional. And I think where we are going in this world, more people are not they're questioning their faith, but they're back in their faith, but they're also questioning, what do I really believe? I know that God is real. I know that he loved me. I know that there is a plan, but I want to know what my plan is, or I want to know what his plan is for me. And that is for us, we as members of my faith, we believe that each and every single one of us has an individual duty to share the gospel, that it is not, we're here with how Charlie Kirk said, let's see, have kids, have kids, have kids, have kids. But first off, find your faith, get married, have kids, build a legacy. And those are things that are imperative to our survival in this world is our families, because families are the only thing that we can create in a sense. Like, yeah, we can go out and build businesses and create all that stuff, but like mom and dad get to build their own little center of people that they want for their worldview.
Yeah.
How wonderful it is that we are given the opportunity to create a life that is going to be dedicated to God.
I do a 5-minute devotional every morning, and it's for women. And it was interesting. Out of all things, God truly talks. Goosebumps right now, because my devotional this morning, it was titled, "My Kids Are Driving Me Crazy." Automatically, I'm always excited. I'm always diving in. I journal. I do the prompts. Immediately, I sat here and I was like, I'm not a parent. This is not going to speak to me. I do not want children. I feel like that's been an issue. I've talked to one of my really close friends on social media. I have another creator that's huge on Instagram and TikTok. And she's like, you've been posting a lot about your faith. You've been posting about, what you believe and what you don't believe. And she's like, I have a question, because as a female, it says in the Bible, like, you are put here to have children. You are put here, like, as you said, to create, to have a family, to have that center. What about us women that don't want children? Like, we already feel like a failure. And I went through the devotional today and I was like, no, like, there's something in here. If you don't understand something, keep going, study, read. But it was interesting because it talked about being humble. It talked about having integrity. And I sat there and I was like, just because maybe, like, if you're listening, you're like, I don't have kids, or I'm not Christian, or I'm not Mormon. This whole episode can show that and reflect that as well. You can still be humble. You can still have integrity. You can still have a plan for yourself.
100%.
Which leads me to, we're talking LDS. Okay. I just want to see your reaction. You don't even have to say anything because I already know what it's going to be. I just want to literally, if you're watching this episode on video, I want your reaction to this so badly, which I didn't put it in our little template because I was like, I'm going to throw you a little bit. Because when we think of Utah, we think of Mormons. When we think of Mormons, we think of LDS. But we also think of something in the entertainment industry, which is The Secret Life of Mormon Wives. Hi, I'm addicted, straight up addicted, binge watch all the time. But I want your reaction to this, because we're going to go into, like, we're deep diving into the LDS of, like, misconceptions. ABC, you just picked the new Bachelorette. Who is Taylor from Secret Life of Mormon Wives? What is your reaction? Life got you busy, brain running on overdrive, struggling to fall or stay asleep? Maybe you just need a little boost to get through the day? Meet my go-to gummies for every day and every night support. From their daily cruisers for when the day feels like slow-mo to their nighttime blend to help you unwind and finally relax, we've got you covered. Order now and use code Tabitha. No heavy grogginess, no weird side effects. What are you waiting for?
My reaction is she, all due respect, right? To be respectful, but I truly don't believe that her and most of her friends live anywhere near the standards. I was actually pretty upset with them. When we can get into that as we go in a little further, but they definitely don't represent the church in its true standard. So I'm not a big fan. I've never watched any of it. To be honest with you, when I first saw their first Mom Talk video, and I was like, gosh, here we go. And it's turned into something, and now everybody thinks that we're weird.
We're going down that weird route.
Before, yeah. I was like, if they didn't think we were weird before, they're gonna think we're weird now.
I mean, they kind of made dirty sodas a thing, so I mean, there's that. So what would you
people
say
off
are, like,
the alcohol?
yeah. What would you say are the top 3 misconceptions of the LDS Church? If you were to name the top 3, if you're to squash them right now.
The misconceptions is that we don't worship Joseph Smith. We worship Jesus Christ. He is in our name. We are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We believe that Joseph Smith was a young boy who was given a prophetic vision, and in its fullness, he saw God the Father and his son, Jesus Christ. And so from there, he was given an opportunity to receive a record of a civilization that once lived here in the United States. And this civilization is a witness to Jesus Christ after his resurrection, and that Jesus Christ also came to America, and that it is a record here, but we also believe that he showed himself. There's plenty of records out there that talk about a white man of some sort coming to all these other civilizations. At some point, Hawaii has a whole culture on that. So the Book of Mormon is also not our Bible. It is a second witness of Jesus Christ. We believe in the Bible to fullness of its correction. Let's put it that way. So we believe that the Book of Mormon goes hand in hand with the Bible to support one another. And let's see, the third misconception is we're not all swingers. We most of us value our privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And all the things that people want to perceive the church, we're not swingers. Are there people that are breaking their covenants and doing that? 100%. There's a lot of people doing a lot of bad things in all other religions too. But yeah, we're not swingers. I can't even find one wife. So
Speaking of
I don't know.
relationships, because I think this is crucial, because I think one of the big questions Taylor was asked, because I was listening to, she went on Call Her Daddy. Oh my Lord. I listened to it on the flight. Of course, I had to download that because I'm like, okay, we have Alex Cooper in a room with Taylor talking about religion, talking about The Bachelorette, talking about LDS, talking about Utah. Like, hello. Yeah, I have to listen to that. I downloaded it. Sorry, Alex, you're the shit. Okay. So I think my main thing, and I knew Alex was going to come out the chute and ask, she asked Taylor if she meets somebody on The Bachelorette that is not Mormon, would that be something she would date outside of her religion? She said yes. Then she obviously asked, okay, but they have to move to Utah, and she said yes. Being that you're back in your faith and you're finding your pathway again, and you are very proud, especially on social media, of your church, of your temples, of your faith, and of your relationship in your faith walk and your faith journey. Is that something you're comfortable with? If you find this amazing, does she have to fit into the LDS religion? Or would you date outside your religion?
So to answer that, we talked about me coming back into my faith, right? So I dated outside my religion and for a while, but every single time my religion always came into play. And so I could have been married 10 times over to quite a few different amazing women. But it was funny because last year, this time, I took this woman out who I met at work, and we went on 2 dates. And I tell you, when this woman was probably like almost everything I ever wanted, we didn't discuss any religion or anything, but we did discuss politics, and we were very much on the same. We were out in the parking lot after Top Golf and just kissing here or there. And then I asked her, I said, what are you doing tomorrow? And she's like, well, I'm going to go to church and watch football. I said, well, that sounds like a great Sunday. And I said, yeah, same. And she's like, oh, what church do you go to? And I said, well, I'm LDS. And her face was like a deer in the headlights and pushed away. And she was very much convicted of, well, that's not going to work out. And she, like, as hard it was for her and I, like, we admitted to each other probably a couple months later that that was the kicker. And so for me, as I've gotten closer and back into my faith, I have the same convictions now that she does. I want the LDS marriage. I want someone who is not going to get married married to me, and then all of a sudden, and this is one of the actually bigger problems that's happening in our church right now, is people that are not completely convicted. They just want to they think that, oh, I'll just get married in the temple, life is great, have a great marriage and so forth and whatnot. Then all of a sudden, what they already had a faith crisis on, or what they were not convicted on, all of a sudden the church is not true, XYZ, so forth. So they never truly were convicted. So I need someone that after marriage, you're not going to all of a sudden have a faith crisis. And if you do, of some sort, that you are going to talk to me about it, and then we're going to be able to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the biggest issues that I've seen in my church and with people that leave, is that all of a sudden it could be man or woman that's like, yeah, I don't really want to go to church anymore. I don't really believe it. And before you know it, the whole family is getting divorced. And so, yeah, because we believe in the family so much, I need to be right here and aligned with my wife. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as of now, and I'm on Hinge. Okay, I gotta tell you, like, I'm glad I moved to Utah because it is so much easier to put in my bio that I'm LDS, and everybody understands. Like, if someone puts that in their bio, that means that is it.
Mm.
And so it's so much easier being here in Utah, being able to say, hey, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is what I'm looking for. And people will either match with you or they won't, But yeah, I feel like just yesterday, this woman apparently didn't read my bio. She just thought I was cute, which is cool. I'm glad that you thought I was cute and you matched with me. That gives me a lot of confidence. But she said, oh, I didn't see in your bio that you're LDS. I am so not LDS. And I said, well, you're probably right. It's probably not going to work out, but I've enjoyed the conversation. Never responded back. She just unmatched. Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, I'm not like Taylor Paul, and there's plenty of other members of the church that are not completely convicted in being aligned religiously. But I also believe that Taylor Paul is not convicted
Yeah.
of her faith. Actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm. I think from the outside, I have a dear friend of mine that moved from Phoenix to Utah. She found her now husband. They have a family. And you and I kind of talked about this in the LDS church. He was raised, LDS, and now he is like completely against it. He doesn't really believe in any type of faith, which is fine. But he had such a sour taste in his mouth because of his experience. And interesting when you're like, I just don't feel that Taylor Paul has, her conviction. I just don't feel that she's there. I feel like there's like two complete opposites from the outside perspective for me. Because I'll be the first one to admit, like, I don't really know a lot about it. Like my best friend in high school, she went to LDS Church. She was Mormon. I remember going to her house and I'm like, oh, do you want to go do this? And she's like, no, let's read the Bible. And I was like, I'm not reading that. Like, no. But I think it was like a concern for me because I felt this like weird feeling of I'm not
Yeah.
Mormon. Like, I'm going to go to hell if I read this book that you're talking about and you're so excited about. And I remember going to a Bible study with her. Talk about awkward. Talk about awkward. I was just sitting there like, what time is it? How much longer do I have? How long have I been here? When did it start? But for me on the outside, and now I can see that, is I feel like there's two polar complete opposites when somebody says they're LDS, because I feel like it's either what we're seeing on social media and what we're seeing portrayed as a form of entertainment, or it's like I personally think of like, those that live in a compound and they are like married to multiple people and they have these like huge families. And that's why I wanted to have you on to like say, like, this is a form of faith that like maybe you can kind of school us. Your church has been around for a really long time. Like, y'all know what you're doing. And I think what you're showing on social media is interesting too, because you're showing what your faith, what your church, like we saw in that terrible tragedy of that, individual that was a family man driving his vehicle into one of the churches and, firing and doing all this stuff. And it was interesting. Love you to death because you already know this. I loved what you posted about that. It wasn't this like defense mechanism of you did this to our faith, you did this to our church, you did this to us as a community. It was, who was that individual? He had a family. Let's help his family. Let's do a GoFundMe. It showed this like new sense of what your church is really about, which I found very kind of like educational because like I didn't know that the LDS church thought like that.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I wanted to get into with the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, is not one of them, not one that I know of, ever came out and said anything about that shooting
I
that
noticed
I know
that.
of. And
Uh-huh.
not one of them did anything that would bring awareness to it, to talk about it. But yeah, that moment. So Charlie Kirk shooting happened in Utah, and that happened 2 weeks prior to now this mass shooting at one of our churches in Michigan. The night before, our beloved prophet, President M. Nelson, passed away. And so it was an incredibly weird, our hearts were like absolutely shattered in our faith. Like, I wouldn't say in our faith, but like as a community, we were like, man, we are just getting hit hard, having it being in Utah, having our church being shot up, having our prophet pass away the night before. And then within 24 hours of us finding out who the shooter was, finding out about his family. And if you know this was the best part of this whole thing is when we set up a GoFundMe, every single dollar that got sent, 90% of it was from the LDS members. And a lot of people are like, well, why didn't the church just pay for it? You guys pay all this tithing and so forth. And my response to that is we do what we can. We as members of the church, we're always taught if you have a little bit more to give, give. It's not about how much a church has. The church didn't have to, I mean, we were the victims. We didn't have to do anything, but we raised, I believe, for all victims, including the wife and wife and child of the shooter. I believe we raised over $3.5 million for all victims and their families. We believed that to extend mercy, that we wanted to let them know that we love them and that it is not their fault that the father and husband decided to go and do something like that. And it was crazy because it was like, if you're not there, I'm sure that there's a lot of people from that congregation that might have some hard feelings. And, because it did happen to them. But I know a lot of members that immediately, just as soon as we posted that the shooter, like, have mercy on what he doesn't know.
Right.
He was given information that was not all the way not true. He was filled with bad preachers saying things about our religion and us as a people that brainwashed him to believing that we were anti-Christ. And unfortunately, all of that hate led to that destruction of him and families and so forth. But I did take note of which members of our faith that are prominent members. Bryce Harper and his wife are members of the LDS faith, and I didn't see one post from them, and that truly upset me. I don't care, Bryce. I really don't care whether or not you're in the playoffs right now. You could spend about 10 seconds making a post, helping a family, saying something. So yeah, I think the reason why I'm 10 toes deep even more so is my hero in Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I have members of my faith that were killed for what they believed in. And so at this point, it's like, what do I've got to lose? I got to lose my life too? Cool. Like, at this point, the only thing that stays, and I know this from this year, from my friend Joe, who passed away, the only thing that stays on this earth are your testimonies. When you leave, you don't take anything with you. Your testimony stays with people who remember what you said. And when you leave, you take your spirit with you. There's no possessions. And so I'm 10 toes deep in my faith. Whether people believe it or not, that's up to them. But I'm not going to stay silent. And I recommend others not staying silent of other faiths too. If something brings you complete joy and happiness, why would you not share it?
Yeah.
Yes, share it. Something brings you joy and you're deep and you have felt that conviction. Don't stop. Don't be scared. Like, now makes it more clear for me, what I'm willing to give my life up for. And the only thing I'm willing to do that for is my faith and in the service of others. The funny thing is my friend Joe, when he passed away, he was serving his sister. and not by like serving, or he was on the freeway trying to get her off the her car broke down, and he was trying to tow her, and he got sideswiped. He had to get out of
Mm,
the car. He got sideswiped on the freeway. What greater joy to know that that you died the way that you lived by serving others. And
chills.
what greater way to die than in the service of your fellow being,
Hmm.
your fellow man.
So, how do you do this on social
Um,
media? Like, you're a man walking in faith and you're not afraid to speak. I think it's Charlie Kirk has taught us all that. You never know when your last day is going to be. And, be true to you, be true to yourself, be true in your faith walk. So, how do you do this on social media with temptations and judgments as a man, especially now with this episode? Like, you were vulnerable in the beginning about what you struggled with, and you
yeah,
weren't perfect. None of us are perfect. We're humans. So, how do we walk this
yeah.
faith journey on social media with judgment and temptation? What would your advice be?
Constantly don't ever walk back. Like, if you said it, don't walk back. Go forward. Even double down on it. Because the reason why we don't even say anything in general is because of shame. If we don't get rid of the shame and come to a full understanding and accountability, we will be able to express ourselves that much more. We'll be able to find people that we're able to help. My goal in life is to have my experiences show other men and other women too. Hey, this might be you want this godly man. Well, most of us godly men have been in hell before. Like, we have gone through hell to try to get where we're currently either at or trying to get. I I guess that's my testimony right there, is like, I want all men and women who are struggling with addictions, especially the one that I'm dealing with, that to be honest about it. Are you in recovery, or are you recovered? What are we doing?
Mhm.
How can I help you? Where can I show that I believe in you? Because I want people to start believing that we can become like our Savior.
Mhm.
Our scriptures say that. Become perfect like Jesus Christ is perfect. And that doesn't mean that we're going to become perfect in this life. That will not happen. We all know that. When you die, you leave your most imperfect body where it's at. And
Mhm.
when we are resurrected, we're going to be resurrected with a perfect body. And so I just want people to know, with how much I'm opening up, it's just a start. I still am struggling with, okay, how do I go about this? You're talking about, how do you go about this on social media? Well, it's still difficult. I'm still trying to figure out my lane, but it's conversations like
Mhm.
this that I know I'm helping others, that I know that there's others that are struggling, other men and women that are struggling in this regard. And that if I can show that, hey, I've got a strong testimony, but that testimony comes from experience. Almost every single prophet was born with sin. Actually, every prophet has had sin. There's never been a perfect prophet out there.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so I just, yeah, I just want people to know, none of us are going to die perfect. None of us, none of us are ever going to have that perfection in our lives ever, but we can be perfected in Christ.
I wanted this conversation because I wanted it to be there's no perfection. Nobody's perfect. Your friendships aren't perfect. Your relationships aren't perfect. Anyone that's listening, your life is not perfect. Just because you have a different faith, maybe you have a different walk, maybe you have different experiences than somebody else, it doesn't mean that you can't learn from each other. I mean, Ethan and I just had a conversation a couple days ago before this where I was like, you have to come on. I think we talked for like 2 or 3 hours. And it was something where we talked, we learned from each other. We didn't judge each other. 4? Yeah. We
For
don't
just
judge
four
each
hours.
other. Stay humble, have integrity, be open. I'm learning things every day. I've learned a lot just in having this podcast and soon to be 4 years, because your story can affect somebody else. It doesn't matter your faith, it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter, your upbringing, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. We all came into this life the same. We're all going to leave the same. And I wanted listeners to hear this and think, "Oh, I'm not LDS, or I'm not Christian, I'm atheist. You can pick something up in having a conversation with another human being. Even if you listen to this episode and realize, you know what, I'm a man or a woman struggling in addiction. I don't have friendships. I have anger. I have animosity in my life. There might be a reason. Sit and reflect, find who's in your community, try something new. Maybe it's something where you were raised without religion and now you're in a faith and you're embarrassed, or maybe you don't feel that you're as far advanced as those around you. Just start. If this conversation brings you anything, and no matter what you're struggling, in order to fix it, you have to start. You have to take a step. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to put all your information, as y'all know, in the bio description. But I appreciate you coming on and stating, you know, as a man in faith, you have made mistakes. You have stumbled. You have sinned.
yeah.
You still are going to sin. You're still going to stumble. You're figuring it out. But I'll never forget. Ooh, see, I try not to cry. I'm not crying on this season. First episode of the season, we're not happening. No. But I remember you having a conversation with me in private. And I was like, when you're ready to share it, you'll share it, which you did. But you're like, you know, I have an addiction. And I was like, huh, okay. I mean, I already knew when we were in California that one time, it wasn't alcohol because I made you try your very sip of margarita for the very first time. I'll take that. Probably not something to be proud of, but I'll check that box. But when you told me your addiction, my mouth fell to the floor because I saw you in this light of like picture perfect faith perfection. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, is because, again, you're not perfect. You're going to sin. You're going to stumble. But you started to make that first step of, I see this as a problem. I'm going to fix it. And you're still going to struggle. Like, it's not just like, gone. Like, it's still a struggle. So I appreciate you coming on
Yeah.
and being vulnerable, sharing your struggles, especially as a man, because men don't share that a lot. It's not a failure. Just take the step.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say. We were talking about, you know, if you're just starting in your faith, if you are curious about my faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.org and look us up online. We'll come up like on Google, all the searches. If you want missionaries to come out and teach you, they will come out and talk all kinds of Jesus and things with you. You want to talk a little conspiracy theories, they'll entertain it. But yeah, no, these missionaries out there, whether they're young women, you know, that are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, young men that are just coming into their lives after high school, they're there to help serve and help you understand. And they're not perfect either, but it is their goal to bring others unto Christ. So if that is something that interests you, I recommend going on Google, looking us up, and seeing if we get some missionaries out there.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode, the Little Bit of Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube for sneak peeks of what's coming next. Jump in the comments. I love hearing from you. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious, and keep thinking and talking outside the box.